Okay, good. So, good afternoon and welcome everybody. It's really a pleasure to have you all here today with us. This is the second session of our Global Hybrid Summit in the LTATA Forum. And today's like a soft opening day. It's first day, so we are allowing time for participants to join, explore Kiko chat, and have a chance to also meet with other summit members that will be joining in the first day. We just had a very interesting session in the morning for the UTC local time in Portugal. Early in the morning for the participants from the US. We had already some participants in US. And it's now a great pleasure that I have here with me Johannes Boch from Novartis Foundation. Johannes Boch is the Director of Access and Urban Health of the Novartis Foundation. And he has kindly organized a very interesting panel that is going to explore ways on artificial intelligence can be used in healthcare. This is pretty much on top of the agenda of the European Commission, and it's also an important subject of our last day of this Global Hybrid Summit. So let's use this first session to have an eyes opener on this team. And Johannes, by all means, the floor is yours. We're able to do in the next 50 minutes.
Thank you, Paulo. Thanks a lot also for having us. In the name of the Novartis Foundation, I welcome also the participants of the panel. A great pleasure to having you here. Marco is the Executive Director and Chief Innovation Officer of the Hospital das Clínicas, based in Sao Paulo. And Marco will contribute with his experience from several projects of the AI nucleus and the innovation hub at the clinical hospital of the state of Sao Paulo. Pleasure to have you here. We have João, who is leading the IDEA.gov as Director of Science and Technology and Innovation at the Department of Economic Development of the state of Sao Paulo. João, team and colleagues have structured, now coming out of the COVID-19 crisis, and obviously already with plans before, an innovative mechanism of how governments can source and support innovative tech solutions to enable innovation in public health and in the public health sector. And last but not least, obviously, thank you also for a participation from India. Our colleague, Dr. Sujoy, who is Chief Medical Information Officer and Vice President of the Apollo Hospital. And the Apollo Hospital, under the guidance of Dr. Kar, is working on implementing AI-driven solutions to improve quality of care delivery. And Dr. Kar will also then help bringing forward our discussion on enabling workforce and what is the current status of the Apollo Hospital in deploying AI solutions in their clinical care. So thanks again for all of you to join. I will also, for the audience, give a little bit of context how finally we also got to this panel, so to say, and the reason why we structured that panel and have brought together those experts from different geographies is that the Novartis Foundation, as a co-chair of the Broadband Commission for Sustainable Development and the subgroup of digital health, has issued in September a new report which is looking at the roadmap to AI maturity for building ecosystems together with public and private partners of how we can advance AI solutions and data science solutions and how those solutions can be brought into a broader ecosystem from a public health and digital perspective. I will share some slides with you as an overview. And then I'm already excited to hear from practical experiences from Brazil as well as from India. Paulo, if you could just perhaps enable me to share my screen. Thank you very much. So like I said, I think that is actually a very interesting report for the entire conference and also for the entire Portuguese and Indian ecosystem and interested parties now watching our discussion. So please also go to either the Novartis Foundation site, the Broadband Commission site directly to download the report and the roadmap. Historically, the Novartis Foundation has been engaged since 2017 as a co-chair of this working group and has first issued a call for governments to develop national digital strategies. So even though 2017, only 3 years ago, in terms of content, it already seems like light years. And in that report, we focused on calling out to governments for sustained senior leadership and committed financing to develop a data strategy in public health, to implement effective governance mechanism. And we described also what are some possibilities to set up national ICT frameworks. In that case, still focused on digital health. And you already see that some of those items, of those 3 items, are recurring items that are still up to date today. And that also for the Novartis Foundation brought then, was the continuity of the content when 2018 we issued the next step, how to address non-communicable diseases and accelerate healthcare coverage in low and middle income countries, where through then extensive stakeholder interviews and analyzing different ecosystems around the world, we identified what are the key 6 building blocks for developing a sustainable digital health ecosystem and digital health solutions, which focused on what are requirements from policymaker side, what are indications for legal frameworks that have to be in place, what are standardized infrastructures that need to be addressed in order to also build interoperability to integrate and process data. Obviously, also a very important point from the Novartis Foundation perspective, what are relevant partnerships that you have to create cross-functionally and also across different hierarchies in the specific functions, and how can you move forward to a sustained financing mechanism that also then reflects in a sustainable business model of those digital health solutions. Like all of you know, today we are in a little bit a different situation also concerning, or let's say, based on COVID-19, but also due to COVID-19. So we have several new challenges, but also new opportunities based on the pandemic, which obviously is related to a high increase in premature deaths. But we are still also facing issues that have been, I would say, also systemic for quite some time, ranging from the dual disease burden from non-communicable diseases and infectious diseases. We are facing an even stronger increase in global healthcare spending, and also obviously a shortage in healthcare worker, which I think is also on the tip of everyone's tongue when they talk about what are the challenges of global health. And so the Novartis Foundation, together with the Broadband Commission, believes that artificial intelligence can actually be one of the drivers to address those global healthcare challenges. And that's why we then also investigated or started the endeavor to investigate in a global outreach to experts and analyzing benchmarks for for developed in AI and implemented AI. How can that ecosystem thrive and move forward? and what are those best practices and benchmarks that we can use for replication and indication across different geographies. So we see that obviously the AI promise is not only a promise anymore, but it is already helping to reduce healthcare cost, improving quality of care, and also expanding access. And through in the report, you will then see that the landscape review of over 300 different examples of AI revealed that there is a certain pattern or clustering around different solutions that focus on population health, which focus then also more on public health solutions and prediction in the public healthcare sector for decision making, preclinical research and clinical trials on drug development, for example, optimization of clinical care pathways, which we are also going to hear a little bit more later, a strong focus also on patient-facing solutions, and then obviously, last but not least, the optimization of health operations, which then is more in, let's say, process optimization, procurement, logistics, and staff. The AI maturity roadmap that is then laid in the report focuses on giving actionable insights to the reader to have really concrete examples how different elements that are necessary for an AI ecosystem and an AI development to thrive, how those different elements can be achieved. So obviously we know that those elements like people and workforce, the focus on data and technology, on data integration, on governance and regulatory issues and so forth are interconnected. And you can then find in the report different benchmarks that help you to position if you have the aspiration to further enhance your AI capability in your organization or as a policymaker. What are concrete examples and concrete global benchmarks where you can either start exploring your journey in AI or even already build an integrated ecosystem. So with that AI maturity framework that we are now going also to apply together with our speakers to concrete examples, the Novartis Foundation, and also I think on behalf of the Broadband Commission, we believe that AI is a possibility to enhance healthcare delivery, use resources in a more optimal way. And I'm happy then also to move forward in our panel and to move to some really concrete examples of how digital ecosystems, AI ecosystem have been implemented and how concrete solutions show impact on the ground. So with that short introduction, I will hand over to João. So like I, in my introductory comments, mentioned before, João and his team during the COVID crisis have implemented a government innovation mechanism. And please, João, the floor is yours to give us some background on that.
Oh, thank you very much, Johannes, for the invitation. And it's a pleasure to be here and share our experience with you and learn from yours as well. So I'm going to share my screen in order to show you a little bit of what we have been doing. Just let me... Do you see my screen, right? Okay, so as Johannes has mentioned, this program we have been developed is called IdeaGov. We have been setting it up since last year, since the beginning of last year. We have been making an assessment phase and a designing phase, but it has actually been put in place this year. It was launched in the middle of June, so it was in the height of the pandemic in Brazil, which hit especially hard in São Paulo. So what is this program? It's basically an open innovation hub which connects innovative solutions to government and societal challenges, so to improve quality and efficiency of public services. So our basic mission here is to source innovative solutions from the innovative ecosystem to the government. So how do we find these emerging technologies and use them to provide better quality of public services? So what we do is we try to use the public procurement as an instrument for promoting innovation. And although this is a very much used instrument, as for instance in the European Union, in the UK, in the US, in China, it is not really used in Brazil. It's quite a novel feature here to use the public procurement as a means of promoting innovation. And it possesses a great potential as public procurements are said to represent something about 13% of Brazil's total GDP. So there's a huge market to be explored and a huge potential to be explored over there. As it is not a thing that's commonly made, we have tried to devise this single and more simpler gateway in order to implement these innovative solutions and to create a whole support infrastructure for implementing those innovative solutions in the government, both for the enterprise, I mean, both for the startup, which is proposing this innovative solution, and for the teams inside the government, inside public hospitals and agencies, which are going to use it. So we have devised this 5-stage journey, which starts with setting the agenda, setting what are the challenges we're going to face, and ends in the implementation and scaling up phase of these solutions. So how do we do this? First, we identify potential challenge sponsors within the government. Bego is here. He has been our great partner in this project because Hospital das Clínicas was our first and has been our most consistent challenge sponsor so far. So we start by identifying which are probable causes we're going to address. We then try to create some alignment to actually set this agenda and to structure partnerships around it. And then we proceed to a phase of understanding in a more profound way how these problems work and how can they become open challenges, open calls for us to source these innovative solutions. Well, later, after we have opened these calls, we select the most fit innovative solutions, and we start this test bed phase in which we develop these pilot projects. We test the solutions, we identify if they're actually working, if it makes sense for this agency or this hospital or this government agency to implement it. And then we proceed to a phase of scaling up, to actually procuring it and implementing it into a larger scale. These are some of the main features which are offered for these participants, for the enterprises that are suggesting the solutions for the government. So they receive R&D support, infrastructure from government agencies which are related to this area. Probably our main feature is this real-world testbed, which is offered so they can test their solution in a real-world environment. We have access to technical specialists and customized content. So we help this startup to sell to the government, which is not a trivial thing to do. We also provide them networking, residence, a co-working space, and a very customized acceleration program in order for the startups to develop their business model to actually sell to the government. And we also connect them with funding, both public and private, and financing, so they can scale their production in order to sell their products or services to the government. So we have started our program by addressing COVID-19 related challenges in the health sector. And we have devised this multi-stakeholders task force assembling government institutions, private and third sector organizations to help us to do that. So Novartis Foundation is one of these organizations. The Hospital das Clínicas is one of these organizations. But we also have something like 13 different stakeholders, which were very active participants in helping us to set this up and implement this program during the height of the crisis. And during these last 4 months, we have concluded 4 challenges addressing these COVID-19 related issues. More than almost 118 proposals were submitted and assessed, and have selected 11 different innovative technological solutions. One of the most interesting ones was this diagnosis through AI. So how do we use AI in order to help the doctors to identify COVID-19 through X-ray exams? Now we have entered into a new phase. We have launched, actually last week, we have launched this new phase in which we have identified 4 new challenges inside Hospital das Clínicas, which are related to this, what we are calling a patient's digital journey. How do we make the patient's journey when it goes to the hospital to be easier, to be more digital and more humane? And we have identified 4 different challenges, which go from how do we create more data-driven requests for medical examinations, so we make them more precise. How do we better the patient's user experience through more digital channels of getting to the patient? How do we automate the medical examination appointments? And how do we implement remote operation for this medical imaging equipment? So right now we're in this phase. We have been mostly learning from the lessons we have acquired during this whole COVID-19 phase, and we're preparing for this for the future, for the following editions of the program, for the next causes we're going to address. So it's going to be a pleasure to hear more questions and follow-up discussions. Thank you very much. And how do you say in Portuguese? Muito obrigado.
Yeah, thank you very much, João, for the presentation. I would have one question before we then hand over to Marco to go really into a use case. I think you showed in the beginning also very nicely what is the process, for example, for needs assessment, testing, scaling, and you actually also build a real business model for a government service, so to say. So if you would now have to do this again from scratch in another geography, what would be your kind of two key points of recommendation?
Okay, this is actually not an easy task to summarize it only in 1 or 2 points, but I would have to say that we have to start, and it's going to sound like a cliche, but it's not. It is not, in fact. You have to have this people-centered approach, because what you are actually doing here is a change management. You're implementing a new process and a new business model, a new product, a new service, and it depends from a lot of different people inside these organizations. So we're not starting from scratch, but we're actually starting to create like new features inside the program, and we're focusing mostly on that. How do we make our people even more close to the challenge sponsors team? Do we need to have a member of our team inside the team working alongside the people from the challenge sponsor, like 1 or 2 days in a week? He just goes there with his computer and he works alongside them. Do we need to have more close partners in there? We're trying to devise this right now. So I would say this is a very important feature, and this has proved to be a major bottleneck when it's not addressed properly.
Yeah, thank you very much. That sounds also like an interesting approach, how the government actually can reach out into civil society and the private sector and really build also a functional partnership. I'm very curious also, Marco, you have been a key partner of the government of Sao Paulo. And obviously, besides running the COVID-19 challenge, you have actually innovated a lot inside the Hospital das Clínicas and brought an entire innovation sector. So I'm very excited also that you're here. Thank you. And the floor is yours to share your experience.
Thank you, Johannes. Thanks for having me. First of all, I'd like to thank you from the foundation of Novartis Foundation for supporting our program here. And thank you. And obrigado, Paulo, pelo convite, for the invitation to
Um prazer, Marco. Estamos em direto no Facebook agora, mas temos que seguir em inglês.
Thank you. And I will share my presentation here, just a minute. It's okay? Thank you. I will briefly present the Hospital das Clínicas, and then a short history about our program in AI and data science here. HC is the largest hospital in Latin America, and is connected to the Faculty of Medicine of the University of São Paulo. It has been operating for over 75 years, until 1944. And we have more than almost 3,000 beds, it's 250 beds, and 60 research laboratories here, because it's connected to the university, and the laboratories are in the HC. And we have more than 100,000 images storage per year, and we have 13 years of packs with reports, and I have a huge information here. And during the COVID-19, we use 900 beds just for COVID, when in the moment that the pandemic is so huge here, and today you have 100 beds just for COVID-19. And our program of data science and artificial intelligence started in 2019. It's so young, within the area of innovation, to ensure that it was a broad collaborative program, with a very clear focus on the development of a center of excellence connected to the government, and that would assist the implementation of the use of the artificial intelligence in health, in HC, and São Paulo, and in Brazil. That's our idea. At that time, we understood that there were specific action is in the areas manifested through the purchase of technology from the other companies. It just the technology that it's developed, but that for artificial intelligence to really be used on a scale that could be considered a part of the strategy of the companies, it was also fundamental to have a project that would assist development specifically in healthcare. In HC's innovation area, we always seek partners in the market for the project and the integration of the three main participants. HC is a public hospital, and is connected to the university, the first one, the government, and the companies, the private companies. And the first, we managed to establish a partnership with Siemens in the beginning, is the first part, in the federal government, through the incentive law, and through the innovation area of the state government. João Arturi and Max Vinicius is the head there. Which is our content and program partner. In addition to the HC, that, as I said, is the large hospital connected to the university. We made an initial plan for 2020, but when the time came to start executing the plan, the scenario we used did not exist anymore because the pandemic. It was February 2020. And as we understood what was happening with the pandemic of COVID-19, we understood that it was time for a new plan, for a new trend. And the beginning would to be choose a use case to validate the predicted hypothesis, and we realized that the moment would be to use the COVID-19 as a use case, as a first use case in our project. to present this use case, I use the same framework as of the report of the roadmap map of AI maturity to briefly describe how we enable our program of data science and artificial intelligence during this moment, this last 5 months. Starting with the ecosystem, the partnerships. We first sought the best of breed technology, because I would be a construction in a now environment, and the best can always react quickly. And in addition, we need a collaborative environment, so we choose companies that could work collaboratively. Afterwards, we sought government support. The government of São Paulo, in the IDEAGov is in our support there. As the health area was super busy to connect to the federal government, we are linked to the science and innovation areas. And finally, the internal support of people with training in the area, and the HC, because it's important the HC are connected to the project, because it's so huge here. At this time, we also set the main objective, the new objective, which was the use of the algorithm to increase the efficiency of CT reports to assist the diagnosis of COVID-19 in HC and in Brazil, spread to Brazil. Since at this time in Brazil, there were no PCR tests enough. Because of this, the CTs is one possibility to help the diagnosis of COVID. With the partnership minimally initiate, we start structuring our structure or architecture need to could be scalable, because we don't know in that moment how the project will rise. That would allow to serve the whole Brazil. That's our idea. That could be connected with the existing structure in hospital. We have in this moment a field hospital in Brazil too, and we have a problem with the cost. This process is an adequate cost is important. It was a new model and a new disease. We also thought about what's privacy and security strategy for data, because we don't have this information totally defined at the moment. How to store in a such a way that we could train the existing algorithm, and in the future, in this case using the IDEAGov, use the data to develop a new algorithm and new study in COVID-19. That's the idea, to store all this data. At this point, a very important question arose, and how to choose the appropriate algorithm to start. That's our problem at that moment, because we have problem with latency time, and we can't analyze all the information of the algorithm, because most of it is like a black box. Now you don't know how they are training they was training in the past. And you need to organize the data, and you didn't have at the moment a data lake, and this opportunity arose at that moment, and you start a data lake to COVID-19. And this is May 2020 when the project beginning, and we start to understand with the use case it would be necessary for the project to serve as a structuring base. Ideas use this case for a structuring base for a center of excellence in the future, or for improve our center of excellence. And like the need for people in workforce, that's a problem for us, because we verify that we do not have all the talents needed, and that could work in healthy area. We have talents in AI, but not in healthy area. But we managed to seek a medical leader here with this profile, and we realized that more professionals would be needed, such as doctor with knowledge in the area of machine learning and data, and the engineers and computer personnel with knowledge in the health field. We need to connect this to specialty. Né? We also need to integrate this personnel with the companies and the ideas of the companies that are in our ecosystem, and also train new doctors and the current ones to use this new technology in the most productive way, because the quantity of the work in this moment is so high, because the pandemic is in the peak in Brazil. The next challenge that we have is the regulatory part. The control body in Brazil don't have the knowledge enough to discuss this new technology. It's so new for them, and due to the lack of specialized personnel, they don't have specialized personnel in the agency who control this governance. Is a moment we talk to them about how we send the information about our center, our laboratory, and they ask us with how many medicines we start to use in our laboratory. And they said, no, it's not for medicine, it's just for laboratory for technology. And this is a problem in that moment, because they are thinking about medicines and vaccines, and we talk about artificial intelligence. The data protection law in Brazil is still in implementation. However, because the pandemic in an abrupt way, it was necessary to think about this and more. How to use patient data without future problems. That's our problem in this moment. With this, we open up 3 fronts. One group led by a large law firm in Brazil to assess the needs that arose under the law. Another group to discuss how to govern the data in our data lake that is rising faster. And the third one to set up a strategy to define the needs to be evaluated in a possible purchase in the future, or development of algorithm in the healthcare area. These three topics that we start at the moment. As the project evolved to more hospital request access to the platform, it was necessary to review points and reorganize the details of the project, considering the targeting of needs, the regional difference in the use of the platform, the difference in the use of the platform according to the doctor training, and the definition of the indicators that we would use to analyze whether the project was evolving the way we would like or not, and with what impacts, if this impact is according to our necessity. And finally, the business model. The use case of the platform in COVID-19 is structured to be used to offer other algorithms for other diseases or needs in the future. And you are currently building a long-term sustainability model, because these laboratories is the independence in the future, with sustainability regarding to their own laboratory. But in conclusion, when I received and read the reporting proposing a roadmap to AI in health, I was very happy at the moment, because our use case could be organized in the same framework proposed, and with the evaluation of our project, we can follow this roadmap in some moment or in the future, and they also suggest points that you consider important, because we use them in a real case. Johannes is just a small presentation. There is some numbers here about the project today. I think important. This platform is connected to almost 50 hospitals around Brazil, And today we just analyzed it to almost 20,000 of exams from COVID-19. COVID-19 positive, because there are some ones not positive. You don't put in this chart.
Yeah, great.
I hope I have contributed to the discussion.
Thank you very much, Marco. I also think it was really interesting to see how you use the use case of COVID-19 and the CT image project AI development to go through several steps of development for an AI ecosystem inside the hospital. So also, for example, the regulatory environment, what you mentioned around workforce and so forth. I think that was very interesting also to see in the context of the AI maturity model, because it's supposed to be also a metrics. In considering time, I would move to Dr. Sujoy, because I think you can also bring quite interesting examples, not only of how an AI tool is applied in clinical practice, but also how workforce approaches have been utilized to actually deploy and sustainably use an AI tool. So Dr. Sujoy, I'm happy to hear your thoughts.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. It's really a pleasure, Johannes and Paulo, for inviting us to actually to this conference. I would just give you the perspective of the work that we have been able to do in the past 2 years with the data that we have had in Apollo hospitals. Apollo hospitals, as all of you would be aware, is a 70 hospitals group in India, ranging over 10,000 beds, about close to 4,000 pharmacies, and about close to another 200 clinics, and is one of the most vibrant tertiary care hospitals. And we have been one of the early adopters of digital health, telemedicine in India almost for past 20 years. Now, with the kind of data that we have had in our hospitals, we looked at a particular case where we could predict cardiovascular disease in a otherwise normal individual with, of course, having risk factors, and developed a deep learning model, which took us about close to 6 to 8 months in the whole phase of developing, and then create an API which would sit into our EMR and get prospectively used by the doctors. And that is where Johannes is so interested, that how we could implement that and bring the workforce into account and use them prospectively by using a concept, what we call as clinicians plus AI. Now, just to give you the background of the work, we always had conventional risk scores like Framingham, Q-risk scores, and others, which were there, but they did not do very well in Indian population. They had, their problems with accuracy, selection bias. They had problems with, in their randomized control trials going forward about their accuracy anywhere in the world. And most importantly, in today's age, where you are able to collect so much of data associated with the individual's, health in terms of his diabetes control, glycemic control, hypertension, dyslipidemia, physical activity, diet, and all of that, that could actually help in having some sort of a feedback loop, which we use in AI, and improve the model over a period of time. With that, we had about close to 400,000 records and 60,000 cardiac discharges that we looked at, and built a model with an accuracy of almost 0.85 area under curve AUC. And then what we did is that we validated it in our own population in out of sample data. Again, we got about close to 0.9 accuracy in that as well. And then when we found out that in Indian population that it was doing wonderfully well, we actually went to Maastricht University Medical Center, And we actually validated the model in their population with about close to 21 risk factors, including, the patient's BMI, then of course the vital signs like heart rate, blood pressure, systolic, diastolic, respiratory rate, and all of that. And of course the history of diabetes, hypertension, or medication on any one of them. Now, when we looked at the Maastricht population, now that is the interesting thing, in the power of AI, is that the model that has been prepared with Indian data, population from Indian data, from urban, semi-urban, or rural data, is performing phenomenally well in Maastricht population. They had a area under curve without any calibration of about close to 0.76, which is some way better than what Framingham was doing. And that is where it is giving us a complete understanding of looking at all of these different risk parameters, using this into a population which is completely different from an Indian population, and performing better than the conventional risk scores. Now, what does that signify? It signifies that AI has a roadmap in understanding the risk profile of disease, not only specific to Indian population, but to several populations across the world, and identifying underlying risk factors, which probably might have been missed out, and for that particular population, and bringing it into the model and improve that. And that is why we are looking at, through Novartis Foundation, having more collaboration in Brazil, in Mongolia, in Africa, with AI for Better Hearts program in overall, and to see how we can validate this and improve our model going forward. Finally, and I'll cut short there, the importance of this kind of model is in using this as not something which would remove doctors or clinicians from equation. It is about clinicians and AI model together, which will be able to identify people with underlying risk and tell them what are the modifiable risk factors out of the 21 risk factors that I was talking about, and what they would need to do over a period of next 6 months, 10 months, 1 year to reduce their overall cardiac risk and live healthy. The other important thing is we are not trying to diagnose coronary artery disease. We are trying here to identify risk factors which might lead to coronary artery disease. And thirdly, if you look at it from a maturity perspective, this is not a device in the hands of cardiologists. Cardiologists know it themselves and they know it better. But putting this with clinical decision support system, what we can do is use this in the last mile in primary healthcare centers, where we can use it for better accessibility of people. And that is the goal of both Apollo Hospitals, the Novartis Foundation, and of course Microsoft, who had also teamed up into this whole program, Maastricht University. So the entire data collaborative or consortium associated with it, to actually reach to people on the last mile and ensure that they get that kind of very good approach or very good media to actually evaluate their risk factors and improve over a period of time. With this, I will stop here, Johannes. Once again, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Sujoy, also for contextualizing the aspirations for the data collaborative, and very impressive results also for the usage of the AI and actually data-driven decision-making in clinical care. Thanks a lot to Marco, thanks a lot to João, and I will hand over to Paul for closure.
I'll say thank you so much, Johannes, and for the panel. We are a little bit behind schedule, but it was totally in my fault, because we have this problem in setting up for the beginning, and we have already the guest speakers from the next panel already in this room. We are also live on Facebook. So, John, can you
shortly, your connection shortly went bad.
Okay.
So you were saying that you have the guest speakers from the other panel already in the room.
Already in the room, yes, and maybe we could take advantage of these to ask if there are any questions about the impact or comments about the impact of AI in healthcare, because what we have seen here is that definitely this can have a tremendous impact in the effectiveness of the response citizens and patients will get, definitely. And this is a groundbreaking work that we're seeing here, also from these colleagues from Brazil and from India. From the participants in the room, maybe you would like to turn up your video cameras on and make a transition, and then we'll start the Portuguese panel in 1 minute. Any comments on healthcare and artificial intelligence? Because we have here also some experts in the room. Ugmaya?
For a final question, Dr. Sujoy, you already focused a little bit on the fact that through AI, you can give the health practitioner an actual tool for decision making. I also know, Marco, then in the deployment of the COVID-19 diagnostic tool or diagnostic support tool, did you make similar experiences of how the tool was then deployed into the clinician space, or what kind of challenges have you encountered?
So Joy, if you could start, it's okay.
Yeah, so Johannes, as I commented, predominantly what we were looking at is to have clinicians plus AI and integrate those APIs that we have developed from the algorithm to use it in the EMR or into any interface which would go and get the patient's data to actually tell them whether they lie in the high risk or moderate risk or low risk of developing cardiovascular disease in 7 years, and take actions on that. And what it does is there's that, there is no problem associated with people who are on low risk or high risk. But moderate risk are the people who miss it out on most cases in doctor's office. These people end up dying in a span of, say, 7 years, 10 years, 15 years from cardiovascular disease. Identifying this group is very important contextually. Thank you.
And now we have with us the guest speakers from the next panel, Hugo Maia and Pedro Matos. Hugo Maia is the Director of Innovation of Glint, one of our sponsors, and Pedro Matos is the Head of Patient Excellence of Novartis, another of our sponsors. So maybe Pedro and Hugo, you can tell about the experience of AI in healthcare in Portugal. Is it already a reality?
I can start. Good afternoon to everyone. Sorry, I was answering a telephone call. Today we are overwhelmed with technology everywhere, so trying to deal with all the callings that we are having. So I think we have one or two examples where AI is being applied in healthcare. I think. Saying that, I would reinforce that probably we are really in the early stages of AI. Besides, or despite that, AI already exists for a long time nowadays. But it seems to me that we are just giving our first steps towards the massive utilization of AI in healthcare. We have one or two examples where AI nowadays it's helping physicians to take some decisions, just supporting them on the decisions that they are making about diagnosis or about treatments, and that is already being done. but we think we have a long way ahead of us in terms of AI. There are some industries where I think AI is thriving a little bit more rapidly than the healthcare, and one of these industries I think is the auto industry, where we are seeing every day new advances in terms of piloting, in terms of self-driving cars, and I think that could be some learnings that in the near future we are going to use or utilize in the healthcare sector. So just see the example of I don't know, SpaceX, Tesla, and others like that. But that's my opinion.
Hello, everyone. First of all, thank you for the invitation and for allowing Novartis and myself to share our thoughts on these topics. So first of all, regarding the AI, I think it's really a hot topic right now in our sector and in the pharma industry. I can give you two examples, specific examples where we are applying AI. One is in clinical trials. As you know, it's the heavy part of our process in terms of costs, so it's very expensive and takes a long time to run a clinical trial. And we are trying several approaches in order to optimize time and costs in this process. And we believe that AI will be a great help on this part. But I can give you another example that is completely far away from this one, that is in the financial budget process. So every year we need to plan how much each one of the compounds will sell in the next years, and we need to plan our costs, etc. And we use AI as a tool to optimize that process. As Hugo was saying, we are in early stages on AI, but I think that will have a strong impact at Novartis and in the pharma industry as a whole.
Okay, so thank you so much, my friends, because now we have to wrap up this session and start the Portuguese session that it's in another room in the main room in Kiko. I invite also our Portuguese guest speakers in this panel to join the other session if they want to speak Portuguese. We are going to have a debate on healthcare, a startups revolution, and the Digital Health Portugal meetup. Johannes, thank you so much for your work in organizing this wonderful panel. I'm so glad that we are live in Facebook, so now people can rewatch this session after this presentation is over here. And thank you so much, and I hope you could stay around for the next 3 days in this Kiko chat space for more interactions, more meetings, and more presentations. Thank you so much, dear friends. And now, please, let's move to the other room on Kiko. Goodbye. Para irmos agora para a outra sala do Kiko Chat, por favor.
Qual é que é a sala? É a sala 2?
É a sala 1, sala 1 no Kiko Chat.
Ok.
Ok. Obrigada.